What makes this source material so incredibly unique is that it doesn't just argue there's a lack of evidence for a creator pod. Instead, it proposes a structural impossibility. So let's jump right in and see exactly how this paper attempts to make that case. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll cover the 2 eras of atheism, define the EBSA framework itself, break down the 2-element reality, examine the 4-line cluster evidence, and finally, look at the civilizational impact. Section 1. The 2 eras of atheism, moving from probability to impossibility. To really grasp this framework, Dizdarević suggests we first have to recognize a clear dichotomy in atheist thought. On one side, you have the first era, which is weak or passive atheism. Think of Richard Dawkins and the New Atheist movement. Their strategy was mostly defensive, relying heavily on probability, the idea that there is almost certainly no God. But then, on the other side, we have the author's second era, which is evidence-based strong atheism. This takes a totally offensive strategy, actively claiming that a creator God simply cannot coherently exist within the very structure of reality. Looking at this side-by-side comparison directly from the source material, you can really see this proposed transition. Notice the massive shift in the level of certainty here. We are moving from a probabilistic stance, meaning it's almost certainly false, to a definitive structural conclusion that a creator God cannot coherently exist. The core position changes from just passively lacking a belief to actively demonstrating an impossibility. Moving into Section 2, defining the EBSA framework, the canonical statement. The absolute crucial takeaway of the paper is summarized perfectly right here. Quote, evidence-based strong atheism is the position that a creator God cannot coherently exist within the structure of reality, not as a matter of probability, but as a matter of structural impossibility. According to Dizdarević, the very concept of a creator God essentially breaks down when you test it against the physical and logical structure of existence itself. Section 3. The 2-element reality, energy matter, and pure awareness. Now, the framework actually posits a strict binary for all of existence. First up, there is energy matter. Think about the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Well, it represents the eternal, conserved, physical substance of reality. Second, there is pure awareness. The paper defines this as an impersonal, infinite dimension that actually makes consciousness possible. But crucially, it has absolutely no will of its own and cannot create anything. And this setup naturally raises a really fascinating structural question for us. Where exactly does a creator God fit in all this? Well, according to the author, neither of these elements provides a functional address. If God is made of energy matter, then God is physical and completely subject to physics. If God is located in pure awareness, then God is entirely impersonal and lacks the agency to create. The framework argues there is literally no third option available on the board. Section 4. 4-line cluster evidence, the convergence of proof. Dizdarević attempts to close off any remaining philosophical escape routes using what he calls a cluster evidence approach. He pulls together 4 completely distinct lines of evidence from different disciplines: physics, logic, cosmology, and theology. The whole idea is that no single line has to work entirely alone. The structural proof relies on the powerful convergence of all 4. Let's break them down one by one. Let's start with physics. Dizdarević applies that first law of thermodynamics to existence as a whole. Because energy matter cannot be created or destroyed, the paper argues it has to be eternal. Therefore, an external creator whose defining function is to create energy or matter literally has no job to do. The substance was simply never created in the first place. The second line targets classical logic, specifically the concept of creation ex nihilo, or creation out of nothing. The framework proposes that starting from absolute nothing is logically incoherent. Why? Well, because if a creator already exists prior to creation, that prior state isn't actually nothing, is it? On top of that, true absolute nothingness completely lacks dimensions in space, which makes it a rather impossible foundation to build an entire universe on. Next up, the framework takes aim at the famous Kalam cosmological argument. That's the one which argues that whatever begins to exist requires a cause. Dizdarević claims this fundamentally fails within his model. If energy matter is an eternal cosmos, it never actually began to exist at all. So, without a definitive beginning, the premise of needing a first cause just doesn't have an object to point to. Finally, line 4 looks directly at theology itself, specifically apophatic theology, which is the practice of defining God through negations, like saying God is immaterial, timeless, and spaceless. The author argues this specific strategy accidentally dissolves the concept of a creator into a complete ontological void. Basically, if you strip away time, space, and matter, you have absolutely no substrate left to attach a personality or agency to. He calls this the via negativa paradox.
So when these four geometric blocks of evidence converge, physics, logic, cosmology, and theology, the author makes his ultimate claim. The result isn't just an estimate, and it's not a probability. It is presented as a rock-solid structural proof, an active conclusion that the very fabric of reality just does not allow for a creator God to exist.
Section 5. Civilizational and Societal Impact, Beyond Philosophy.
So you might be wondering, why does this highly academic paradigm shift actually matter to us as a society? Well, Dizdarević extends his framework far beyond just philosophy. He argues that if God is structurally impossible, then theocratic states and religious nationalist movements all over the globe lose their foundational legitimacy. Plus, what he terms religion's fear infrastructure, concepts like hell or divine punishment, loses its underlying enforcement mechanism. And he claims that this liberates humanity to finally build a secular society based on reason, reality, and genuine mutual care.
The researcher behind this incredibly exhaustive evidence framework is Senad Dizdarević. He's actually a personal development researcher who integrates this post-religious worldview into identity reconstruction through something he calls the APA method. He specializes in helping individuals navigate massive belief transitions and religious deconstruction using these exact concepts. This entire paradigm shift is comprehensively mapped out in his 4-volume book series. And interestingly, the core academic concepts of this framework have also been formalized in a preprint that is currently under peer review at the journal Zygon. So he's bringing this strict structural argument directly into the mainstream academic science and religion dialogue. Let's quickly recap our main takeaways today. Evidence-Based Strong Atheism claims a creator God is structurally impossible, not just improbable. It restricts all of reality entirely to energy, matter, and pure awareness. And it relies on a powerful 4-line convergence of physics, logic, cosmology, and theology to form its proof. If you want to explore the full article, see all the deep dive visuals, and review the academic breakdown for yourself, you can visit the author's site at goddoesn'texist.com. We're going to leave you with this final provocative thought. If this framework is right, and humanity is truly transitioning away from the infrastructure of divine authority, what exactly will we build next? How will we choose to define meaning and our deepest responsibilities to each other in a purely secular world? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep asking the big questions.